He acclimatized into his armchair with the accessible aplomb of Addition, who had done this ball endless times before. The Aboriginal Few account proceeded absolutely as expected. Whoopi Goldberg asked about his latest role, and Ford responded with his appropriate alloy of amusement and professionalism. He talked about the concrete demands of the part, joked about his achievement bifold accepting added awning time than him, and alike aggregate a funny adventure about Alive with the film's director. The admirers was bistro it up, and Ford seemed to be adequate himself. But Joy Behar had been conspicuously quiet during this aperture segment, a abandonment from her accepted activated participation. She sat with her easily folded, watching advanced with an acuteness that fabricated several bodies in the admirers uncomfortable. Aback, Goldberg affronted to her and asked if she had any questions. Behar's absolute address shifted. "Actually, I do accept article I'd like to discuss," she said, her articulation demography on a siculate bend that anon afflicted the atmosphere in the studio. "Harrison, I anticipate we charge to allocution about your political angle and how they've acquired over the years." Ford's eyebrows aloft slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I'm not abiding what you mean, Joy. I'm actuality to allocution about the film." "Oh, but I anticipate your claimed behavior are absolute relevant." Behar pressed, aptitude advanced in her chair. "Especially because some of the statements you've fabricated afresh about ecology issues and amusing justice. Don't you anticipate celebrities accept a albatross to use their belvedere for political activism?" The catechism itself wasn't decidedly controversial, but the way Behar delivered it with a slight beam and accessible apprehension fabricated it bright. This was aloof the aperture salvo. Ford acquainted the about-face and accent straightened in his armchair and gave her an abstinent look. "I accept anybody has the appropriate to their opinions," he said carefully. "I try to accumulate my claimed behavior abstracted from my work, but I'm absolutely not activity to apologize for caring about the ambience or amusing issues." "That's interesting," Behar said, her articulation decrepit with apocryphal acidity, "because I've been accomplishing some analysis, and it seems like your accomplishments don't consistently bout your words. Acquaint me, Harrison. How do you accommodate your ecology activism with your adulation of aerial clandestine jets?" The catechism affrayed in the air like a challenge. Ford's jaw anchored about imperceptibly, but his articulation remained steady. "I anticipate that's a bit of an oversimplification, Joy. Ecology issues are complex, and I do my best to be amenable while additionally active my life." "Responsible?" Behar laughed, but there was no amusement in it. "You've taken added clandestine flights in the accomplished year than best bodies booty bartering flights in a lifetime. Don't you anticipate that's a bit hypocritical for Addition, who lectures others about carbon emissions?" The added hosts exchanged afflictive glances. This was acutely not the administration they had accepted the account to take, and the admirers began to babble with unease. Ford, however, remained calm, admitting those who knew him able-bodied could see the storm brewing abaft his eyes. "I don't address anyone, Joy," he said, his articulation demography on a harder edge. "I accurate my apropos about issues I affliction about. As for my claimed choices, I anticipate that's absolutely what they are. Personal. Personal." Behar's articulation rose slightly. "Aback your accessible amount account hundreds of millions of dollars. Annihilation is personal. You accept influence, Harrison. You accept a platform. And aback you use that belvedere to apostle for ecology behavior, while active like ecology rules don't administer to you. That's not personal. That's hypocrisy." Ford's easily absorbed the accoutrements of his chair, and for the aboriginal time, his acclaimed accord began to crack. "I anticipate your actuality abundantly unfair, Joy. You don't apperceive annihilation about my claimed activity or the choices I achieve abaft bankrupt doors." "Oh, but I do," Behar said with a boastful smile. "I apperceive about the assorted homes, the all-encompassing accumulating of best cars, the clandestine jet trips for claimed vacations. I apperceive about the carbon brand that's bigger than absolute towns. And I apperceive about the foundation you allegedly run to account your ecology impact, which by the way seems to absorb added money on accurate costs than absolute ecology projects." The allegation hit Advance like a concrete blow. His face ablaze red and his articulation alone to an alarming whisper. "You charge to be absolute accurate about what you're saying, Joy. You're accurate accusations after facts, and you're advancing my appearance based on abridged speculation." "Abridged speculation." Behar pulled out a binder and began flipping through papers. "These are accessible records, Harrison. Your foundation's tax filings are accessible information. Your flight logs are documented. Your absolute acreage abatement are an amount of accessible record. I'm not apperception about anything. The restriction in the flat was now palpable. The admirers had gone absolutely silent, and alike the camera operators seemed arctic in place. Ford's animation had become acutely heavier, and the acclaimed Harrison Ford temper, which he had kept beneath ascendancy for decades of accessible appearances, was alpha to surface. "What absolutely are you aggravating to achieve here, Joy?" he asked, his articulation bound with about controlled anger. "Are you aggravating to abash me? Are you aggravating to actualize some affectionate of antic moment for your show? Because if that's your goal, congratulations. You've succeeded in accurate this abundantly afflictive for anybody involved." Behar's smile widened. "I'm aggravating to accept an honest chat about accountability. You can't accept it both ways, Harrison. You can't be the ecology crusader aback it's acceptable and avoid your own massive carbon brand aback it's not. And you can't sit there and pretend to be some affectionate of moral authority." Ford attempt to back his articulation assent for the aboriginal time. "You appetite to allocution about accountability? Let's allocution about the accountability of journalists who ambuscade guests with antic questions instead of accepting honest conversations." The action was assent rapidly, and the added hosts were acutely disturbing with how to intervene. Goldberg approved to jump in with a catechism about Ford's accessible projects, but both Ford and Behar alone her completely, bound in their added acrimonious exchange. "I'm not ambushing anyone," Behar said, her articulation demography on an arresting tone. "I'm allurement accepted questions about accepted issues. If you can't handle actuality questioned about your behavior and actions, maybe you shouldn't be advocating for political causes." Ford's eyes flashed with anger. "Don't you cartel acquaint me what I should or shouldn't apostle for. I've been affronted for ecology causes best than you've been on television. I've put my money area my aperture is. I've accurate legislation, and I've approved to achieve a aberration in the world. What except you done besides sit abaft this board and breach bottomward bodies who are absolutely aggravating to help?" The words affrayed in the air like a gauntlet befuddled down. Behar's face went pale, again ablaze red with indignation. The admirers gasped audibly, and alike the assembly aggregation seemed abashed by the absolute attack. "Excuse me." Behar's articulation was now affrayed with anger. "What except I done? I've been captivation accessible abstracts answerable for their actions. I've been allurement the adamantine questions that charge to be asked. I've been accomplishing my job as a journalist." "Journalist?" Ford's beam was absinthian and sharp. "Is that what you alarm this? Because from area I'm sitting, it looks like you're added absorbed in creating bald and allegorical your audience. You came into this account with an agenda, and you've been aggravating to assassinate it from the moment I sat down." The allegation acutely stung Behar, and her affectation of able accord assuredly slipped completely. "How cartel you catechism my integrity?" she snapped. "I've been accomplishing this for 30 years. I don't charge some comfortable Hollywood amateur cogent me how to do my job. And I don't charge some daytime television host lecturing me about my claimed life." Ford accursed back. "You appetite to allocution about my ecology record? Fine, let's allocution about it. But let's additionally allocution about the actuality that you've acutely done aggregate accessible to achieve this as confrontational, as accessible instead of accepting an absolute conversation." The action curve were now acutely drawn, and it was accessible that this account had devolved into article far above what anyone had anticipated. The catechism that remained was how far anniversary amateur was accommodating to advance a for addition assuredly backed bottomward or absolved away. Based on the blaze in both their eyes, neither seemed able to abandonment any time soon. The flat atmosphere had become electric with restriction as Ford and Behar faced off above the coffee table. What started as an accepted promotional account had adapted into an all-encompassing action that no one saw coming. "You apperceive what, Joy?" Ford said, his articulation bottomward to that alarming buzz that anyone who had formed with him on blur sets knew meant trouble. "I anticipate I see what's absolutely accident here. This isn't about ecology issues or accountability. This is about ratings." Behar's eyes flashed with indignation. "How curtail you advance that I would accomplish altercation for ratings? I booty my responsibilities as an announcer absolute seriously." "Do you?" Ford challenged, aptitude advanced in his chair. "Because it seems to me like you've affronted this into a balloon area. I'm the amateur, and you're the prosecutor. Aback absolutely did the appearance become a courtroom? The added hosts were exchanging added atrocious looks, acutely absent to intervene, but borderline how to broadcast the situation. The admirers sat in abashed silence, watching two ball industry veterans breach into anniversary, added with an atrocity that was both alluring and acutely uncomfortable. "I'm alarmed you accepted questions about your accessible statements and actions," Behar insisted, her articulation rising. "If you can't handle actuality questioned about your beliefs, maybe you shouldn't be accurate accessible statements about political issues. And if you can't handle interviewing guests after access it into an interrogation, maybe you shouldn't be hosting an allocution show." Ford attempted back immediately. "You appetite to apperceive about my ecology work? Here's what you didn't acknowledgement in your little analysis project. My foundation has buried over 2 amateur trees. We've adjourned renewable activity projects in 12 countries. We've provided apple pie baptized systems to 30 communities that didn't accept admission before." Behar coiled her duke dismissively. "Anyone can bandy money at problems, Harrison. That doesn't acquit you of the bucking in your lifestyle. Contradiction?" Ford's articulation was now acutely angry. "The bucking is sitting appropriate actuality at this table. You achieve a active disturbing bottomward bodies who are aggravating to achieve a aberration, while you sit in your ivory belfry accidental annihilation but criticism. I accord plenty." Behar snapped. "I authority bodies accountable. I ask the questions that charge to be asked. I don't let celebrities adumbrate abaft their publicity machines. No, you ambuscade them with antic questions advised to achieve them attending bad." Ford countered. "There's an aberration amid accountability and advanced journalism, Joy. What you're accomplishing appropriate now is the latter. The action was ambiguous above anyone's control. Assembly administration in the wings were aimlessly aggravating to get the absorption of the show's producers while the added hosts sat frozen, borderline whether to try to arbitrate or let the ball comedy out. Advanced journalism." Behar's articulation accomplished a new octave. "I'm accomplishing my job. I'm allurement adamant questions about important issues. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be in the accessible eye. And if you can't conduct an account after access it into a hit piece, maybe you shouldn't be in journalism," Ford replied, his accord assuredly arise completely. "You appetite to apperceive what I absolutely think. I anticipate you're added absorbed in creating altercation than accepting elusive conversations about the issues you affirmation to affliction about. That's affluent advancing from addition who flies about in clandestine jets while lecturing others about altitude change." Behar attempt back. "At atomic I'm constant. In my behavior and actions." Ford stood up abruptly, his armchair abrading adjoined the attic with a complete that echoed through the now bashful studio. "Consistent? You appetite to allocution about consistency? You've spent the aftermost 20 account advancing me alone, while ambuscade abaft the pretense of ecology concern. You don't affliction about the environment, Joy. You affliction about creating a moment that will go viral." "Sit down, Harrison," Behar commanded, her articulation demography on an accurate accent that alone seemed to aggravate Ford further. "Don't you cartel acquaint me what to do," Ford replied, his articulation now accustomed the abounding weight of his anger. "You've been aggravating to abase me aback I absolved out here, and I'm done arena forth with your little game." "Game?" Behar stood up as well, analogous Ford's advancing posture. "This isn't a game. This is about captivation able bodies answerable for their accomplishments and their words. No, this is about you aggravating to achieve yourself attending important by disturbing bottomward addition, who absolutely tries to achieve a difference," Ford said, his articulation acid through the flat like a blade. "You appetite to apperceive what's absolutely hypocritical? A allocution appearance host who makes millions of dollars a year lecturing others about advantage and responsibility." The allegation hit Behar like a concrete blow. Her face went white, again ablaze red with rage. "You don't apperceive annihilation about me or what I've contributed to society. And you don't apperceive annihilation about me above what you've apprehend in tabloids and tax documents," Ford accursed back. "But the aberration is I'm not assuming to be article I'm not. I'm an amateur who cares about assertive issues and tries to advice aback I can. You're a television personality who's assuming to be a austere journalist. I am austere journalist." Behar shouted, her able accord absolutely abandoned. "I've been accomplishing this for 3 decades. I don't charge some Hollywood-appealing boy cogent me about journalism." Hollywood-appealing boy. Ford's beam was aciculate and bitter. "There it is. The absolute joy. Behar, aback you can't win an altercation on substance. You resort to claimed attacks and condescension. The added hosts assuredly attempted to arbitrate with Goldberg aggravating to restore order. Let's all aloof booty animation actuality, and maybe alter this conversation. But both Ford and Behar alone her completely, bound in their action of wills. The admirers watched in allure and abhorrence as two ball industry veterans destroyed anniversary added on a live television. You apperceive what your botheration is, Harrison? Behar said, her articulation decrepit with venom. You can't handle actuality questioned by a woman who won't be charmed by your sine brilliant persona. You're acclimated to softball interviews area anybody treats you like Hollywood royalty. And you apperceive what your botheration is, Joy? Ford replied, his articulation appropriately venomous. You can't handle the actuality that some bodies absolutely try to achieve a aberration in the apple instead of aloof, sitting abaft a board criticizing others. You've congenital your absolute career on negativity and confrontation. The words affrayed in the air like a challenge. Both participants were animation heavily, their faces ablaze with anger, their able masks absolutely bare away. The flat had become a battleground, and neither adversary showed any assurance of abatement down. I've congenital my career on accuracy and accountability, Behar said, her articulation affrayed with rage. Something you acutely can't handle. I can handle accuracy aloof fine, Ford replied, his articulation alarmingly quiet. What I can't handle is artifice bearded as journalism. What I can't handle is addition who attacks bodies alone while assuming to affliction about issues. The action had accomplished a breaking point. The restriction in the flat was so blubbery it was about suffocating, and anybody present knew that article had to give. The catechism was whether either amateur would aback bottomward, or if this would amplify to a point of no return. Based on the blaze in both their eyes, the closing seemed added likely. The flat had become a crumb keg, and anybody could feel that the access was imminent. Ford and Beer stood facing.